Good. All right, well, let's talk about all of us who are nervous and jerky. And living the illusion of having it all together. That's probably not a bad place to start. I don't know how you live your life. One of the promises that God makes in the first reading today is that He has planted Himself in your heart. And you're going to know that you have been planted by the very fact of having been forgiven. Now, forgiveness is a churchy word, and I understand the churchiness of that word. However, there's a point at which you realize, as well as I realize about myself, that no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you promise, sometimes you're just not going to get there. You're not going to complete the task adequately. You're not going to love your neighbor fully and completely in the way that you hope to do. You're just not going to get there because you're not good enough. And the minute you forget you're not good enough, you're no longer a fully functioning human being. You become a fraud, a faker, a liar, primarily to yourself. And at the same time, what will happen when you don't want other people to find out that you don't have it all together all of the time, you will back off from your relationships in order to hide. And the more you hide, the more you live the delusion that somehow you have it all together, because there are less responsibilities and duties and people calling on you. And the more you're afraid to answer that call, your life begins to shrink down. Now, the reason that God said that He would plant with this new covenant forgiveness in your heart before you even realize you have done anything wrong and before you have done anything wrong is for the simple fact of saying to you, I love you, like Andrew said. I love you, like the vicar said. Like God said, I love you, I will always love you, and I forgive you ahead of time for the fact that you're a human being and you're not me. So you never have to live delusionally, thinking that the weight of the world is on your shoulders and that the weight of other people's lives are on your shoulders. They are not. They rest on God and not on you. You become part of His arms and legs, His hands and feet, part of His help, but you're not the show. And that's what He has planted in your heart. You're forgiven ahead of time, that which you cannot do all of the time, and which you cannot do well some of the time, but can do excellently occasionally. And once you understand that, then you really have some good working idea of what forgiveness really means. It's a great gift to all of us, which God has given to us, so that you recognize all of the time that you are forgiven that which you cannot do perfectly and that which you can't do at all. One of the interesting things here, the Journal of Health Psychology. I'm sure many of you read that magazine. Yeah, it's a little slow going sometimes. But in September, was the September 2014 issue, there was an interesting article. Tremendous amount of work with psychologists, psychiatrists, and sociologists on forgiveness. And what they're finding about forgiveness, now think about this for your own life. When are you at your best in living in the world with other people? You're at your best when you don't put pressure on yourself to perform and look perfect without fault. And they're finding in these studies that people who understand that they have been forgiven from the get-go by God are people who have more of a toolbox for living. They're more accepting of their own flaws and weaknesses. They're more accepting of other people's flaws. They're more collegial. They're more teamwork-oriented because they recognize that everybody brings to the plate some other gifts that they themselves do not have. So that forgiveness encourages adaptation to circumstances, more collegiality, better coping skills, and a bigger bag or repertoire of a toolbox for living. The forgivingness in the Bible that has been given to us is really a disposition or a virtue that we have been given that needs to be cultivated and practiced in order to make it worth your time and energy, so that you don't have to live like you're a know-it-all, and that you don't have to hide the fact that you're not, and therefore you don't have to live a lie. It's a wonderful gift when you think about it. It really is. I was talking to a couple of people from the neighborhood a few weeks ago, and it's very interesting. One of them in the relationship is a toucher. Is that making you uncomfortable? Is it? Then I'm a happy man. You're helping to prove the point. Not everybody is a toucher in a relationship, friendship or spouse, or whatever, kids, whatever it is, at work. Some are. And it has made that really a critical, not a crisis, but a real issue in their family living. How do you cope with letting somebody know that you love them? Some people are touchers and huggers. Other people are not. It can cause major problems because you may just, at work, be known as a real crab crank because you're going to avoid the coffee room, because for whatever reason you can't stand to be touched. It just drives you batty. And then on the other hand, there's going to be people, many of you, who just love to be touched and just revel in it. In any case, the way in which you then have to live with that, of course, is by means of forgiveness and forgivingness, a state of mind in which you forgive other people and forgive yourself, your own flaws and your own weaknesses, and then you can begin to recognize with your own humility that you're capable of this, they're capable of that. And there becomes a broader sense of acceptability as human beings, the broad range of character and qualities that go with it. And then that lessens your fear. And that is a great deal of the point of forgiveness, to lessen your fear of life and living. I was interrupted at my sermon at the early service by your dad, as a matter of fact. He said, "Oh, you want to talk about touching?" He's a taxi cab driver. He said, one of the guys I was driving with was driving, and one of the passengers reached over the seat and grabbed him on the shoulder, and he got so scared he ran up on the curb. He said, and Ted said, "Whoa, what did that scare you for?" He said, I've been a driver of a hearse for 35 years. And this is the first time anybody's reached over the seat to touch it. So he's having to learn a whole new way of driving now. But you see, forgivingness. You forgive yourself your own history and your own fundamental flaws. You begin to look at your passengers in a different way. It sounds stupid and minor, but for him it's a biggie. And just for all of us, these things matter. To be able to have planted in your heart with full knowledge and awareness that you are forgiven, your flaws ahead of time and your imperfections ahead of time and your little oddities and idiosyncrasies ahead of time, and the fact that God will surround you with communities of people who will accept those as you accept their stuff, and you begin then to function as a team in life, as a fully functioning human being in life. That's ultimately the gift that God gave with this new covenant. The fact that you're invited to become a fully functioning human being. And in order to be that, to live that, to practice that, you need a community of people to walk through life with. a good gift, a good news for all of us.